You order it to feel sophisticated. You pay 30, 40, sometimes $60 for a single plate. But here's what nobody tells you when the waiter sets it down. The dish you associate with Japanese perfection and ancient elegance may not have originated in Japan at all, and the version you order today was almost single-handedly invented by one man in one American city with one unexpected ingredient. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the next time you order sushi, you'll be thinking about something completely different. Most people assume sushi is Japanese, and in modern form, it absolutely is. Japan perfected it. Japan refined it. Japan built an empire around it. But historians generally trace sushi's earliest ancestor to a completely different part of the world. Not Tokyo, not Osaka, somewhere along the Mekong River in what is now Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar. And here's where it gets strange. The original dish wasn't about the rice. It wasn't even really about flavor. It was about survival. People living near the river would pack raw fish inside fermented rice. The rice created lactic acid. The acid preserved the fish for months, sometimes for an entire year. Then, when they were ready to eat, they threw the rice away and ate only the fish. The rice was never the meal. It was the container, the preservation system. Nothing more. This technique was called Narezushi, and it smelled nothing like what you get at your local sushi bar tonight. It smelled like aged cheese soaked in vinegar, strong, funky, borderline unbearable to modern noses. This is where the story of sushi begins. Not in a minimalist Tokyo restaurant, not in elegance, in hunger, in necessity, in pure survival instinct. So how did this pungent, fish-only preservation method become one of the most refined, expensive, and globally beloved cuisines on Earth? That journey took over 1,000 years, and it required a city in chaos, a single street vendor, and a disaster that nobody saw coming. It's the early 1800s. The city of Edo, what we now call Tokyo, is one of the largest cities on Earth. Over 1 million people packed into one place. Laborers, merchants, samurai, street workers. Everyone moving, everyone hungry. Nobody sitting down for a long meal. And that's where a man named Hanaya Yohei enters the story. Yohei was not a master chef. He was not trained in a prestigious kitchen. He was a street vendor, a working-class food seller trying to feed a city that never stopped. And he had one idea that would change everything. What if you pressed vinegared rice into a small hand-shaped block, placed a fresh slice of fish on top, and served in seconds right there on the street? No fermentation, no months of waiting, no throwing the rice away. Fast, cheap, portable, ready in the time it took to walk past his stall. This was Edo Maya sushi, the direct ancestor of every piece of nigiri you've ever eaten. But here's the thing, history books always skip. Yohei didn't build a restaurant, he built a food stall. A cart for laborers and workers who needed to eat quickly and cheaply. Sushi wasn't luxury food, it was the Japanese equivalent of a hot dog cart. The wealthy ate elsewhere, the common people ate sushi. And for over 100 years, that's exactly what it remained. Street food, working-class food, everyday food. What Yohei couldn't know was that his cheap, portable invention would one day be served in restaurants charging $300 a seat. But that transformation required a catastrophe, and it came without warning. September 1st, 1923. The Great Kanto earthquake, magnitude 7.9. Tokyo obliterated. Over 140,000 people dead. Entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. The city's infrastructure gone overnight. But here's the part that never makes it into food documentaries. The earthquake didn't just destroy buildings, it displaced an entire generation of sushi chefs. Before 1923, Tokyo-style sushi was largely confined to Tokyo. When the earthquake destroyed their restaurants and their livelihoods, hundreds of trained Edomae sushi chefs scattered across Japan. New cities, new regions, new provinces. They brought the technique with them, and for the first time in history, the entire country was eating Tokyo-style sushi. In less than a decade, a regional street food had become a national cuisine. Then came World War II, then American occupation. Then something happened that even most Japanese people don't fully realize. A single dish, invented not in Japan but in Los Angeles, transformed sushi from local tradition into global empire, and it very nearly tore the sushi world in half. It's 1966, Los Angeles, California. A Japanese chef named Ichiro Mashita is working at a small restaurant called Tokyo Kaikan. He has a serious problem. American customers are curious about sushi, but they're frightened of raw fish. And he can't source a key Japanese ingredient, toro, the prized fatty tuna belly. So Mashita makes a substitution. He replaces the toro with avocado. Same creamy texture, same buttery mouthfeel, but avocado is local, cheap, and completely unthreatening to American customers. Then he makes one more change. He inverts the roll, rice on the outside, to hide the seaweed, which American customers found visually off-putting. Many food historians credit Mashita with creating what became known as the California roll, and with that adaptation, everything changed, because the California roll didn't just give American customers something they could eat, it gave them something they trusted. It removed every psychological barrier between a Western customer and raw fish. By the 1980s, sushi bars were opening across the United States. By the 1990s, supermarkets were selling it. By the 2000s, every mid-range restaurant in every English-speaking country had a sushi menu. But here's the conflict nobody talks about. To American diners, the California roll was a revelation. To many traditional Japanese sushi chefs, it was a desecration. Some refused to serve it. Some called it fake sushi. Some said it was an insult to a craft that took decades to master. One dish, two completely opposite reactions. A cultural war fought in silence across kitchen counters on two sides of the Pacific. And Mashita, the man who built the bridge, remained largely unknown outside of food history circles, while the dish he created became one of the most consumed foods on Earth. Now, let's talk about Jiro Ono. You may know him from the 2011 documentary, Jiro Dreams of Sushi. A small restaurant, 10 seats, tucked inside a Tokyo subway station, 3 Michelin stars, a $300 meal that lasts less than 30 minutes, a reservation wait list that at its peak stretched over a year in advance. Jiro became the global face of sushi perfection, the symbol of Japanese mastery, the answer to the question, what does the highest possible version of this food look like? But here's what the documentary didn't follow up on. In 2019, Jiro's restaurant quietly lost its Michelin stars, not because the quality declined, but because Michelin requires that starred restaurants be accessible to the general public. Jiro's restaurant, by then, could only be booked through personal connections and private referrals. Michelin removed it. Most people never heard about it because the myth was already bigger than the restaurant. And that's the real story of sushi's rise to luxury. The global image of sushi as the ultimate refined dining experience was significantly amplified by narrative. A documentary, a mythology of perfection, a story the world was ready to believe. Luxury sushi existed before Jiro, but Jiro gave it a face, a story, a symbol, And once a food has a powerful enough story attached to it, the price becomes almost irrelevant. That's what sushi teaches us, more than any other food in the world. It started as fermented survival food along a river in Southeast Asia. It was reinvented as cheap street food by a Tokyo vendor. It was scattered across Japan by an earthquake. It was sold to the Western world through an avocado, and it was elevated into fine dining through the power of storytelling. The next time you sit down at a sushi bar and pay $15 for 2 pieces of fish on rice, you're not just eating food, you're tasting a story that traveled through centuries, cultures, disasters, and continents before it ever reached your plate. Most people eat sushi and think Japan. Now you know the full journey. Southeast Asia, a Tokyo street cart, an earthquake, an immigrant chef in Los Angeles, a documentary that changed everything. Every bite has a history, and most of that history has never been on the menu. If you want to keep discovering the hidden truth behind the food the whole world eats, subscribe right now, because once you know what's really on your plate, you can never unknow it.